Thanks for downloading Grilled. I'm Cara, editor of the Staff Canteen, and this episode is sponsored by Hellmann's Vegan Mayonnaise. As this month is Vegan Month, we wanted to talk to two chefs about the impact the rise of veganism has had on the restaurant industry and on them as chefs, and they both talk about their own personal experiences with this topic. I was joined by Kirk, chef owner of Plates in London, which offers a vegan-only menu. Kirk opened the restaurant after changing his own diet to vegan after contracting Lyme disease. He looked into the health benefits of plant-based food, and over the past 4 years he has completely changed what he eats. We were also joined by head chef of The Frog in Hoxton, Jamie Park. A former MasterChef The Professionals contestant, Jamie has taken on a vegan diet this month to better understand the plant-based dishes The Frog has on offer. They have a vegan menu all year round, and he wants to make sure that those dishes are as good as everything else they serve. So, morning.
Morning.
So to start with, 10 years ago, what did you think about a vegan diet and catering for them as a chef? Was it a thing back 10 years ago?
No, not at all. I think the word even vegan wasn't a thing, was it? I think even bits of dietaries was very minimal back then. Never mind a vegan diet. What do you kind of think, Jen?
Yeah, when I was 19, I was cooking at a one-star place in the north of England. It's like a fine dining pub, and I can't remember then dealing very much with any form of dietary requirement, let alone veganism. You know, we'd have vegetarians. That was kind of like the max that you'd usually deal with.
Yeah.
So how much is it, do you think people's chefs' mindsets have changed, or is it a consumer-driven?
I think a bit of both. I think it is very consumer-driven. I think we see a change, massive change in people, not just looking at the diet for health reasons, but looking at it for sustainable reasons, looking at it just because they want to maybe have a vegan or a vegetarian diet 2 or 3 days a week, you know, and that they might think that, you know, that's good for them. And like I said, diet's very personal, and I think, you know, it is a great thing that more chefs are doing amazing vegan menus, and there are some solely plant-based vegan restaurants, and there are some that do both, like, you know, The Frog where we are today, where he cooks meat and fish, but he does an amazing vegan menu for those people as well, and I think that's amazing. So yeah.
So if someone had asked you 10 years ago to cook a vegan dish, what would your response have been?
Probably wouldn't have known what to do.
Yeah, it would have been tough.
Yeah, you see, I think even when even me 4 years ago, and I started just looking at changing things in my diet massively. I was just making salads and stuff at home, you know, and then started to evolve from that. And now where I am now, it's like crazy. I never thought I'd be able to do what I've done now and create incredible flavours. Where I am now, and that scares me to think what we'll be creating in 5 or 10 years.
So, Jamie, obviously you've got a vegan menu for this month. What, if anything, has changed your view on veganism?
So before we opened the first restaurant with Adam in E1, the original behind Brick Lane, we were in the West End in St James, and again in that place we didn't cook for vegans. I mean, we'd have an option, but it was only if somebody asked for it, and that was very rare. Then we moved to the Brick Lane restaurant, and in the first few months we got people asking, or just turning up saying, okay, I'm vegan, what can you do? So I eventually took that as a personal challenge, to create a vegan tasting menu that was as good as and in line with our regular offering. So for us, I think it was definitely more of a consumer-driven thing. If nobody had ever asked for it, then we would probably never have done it. But now we are doing it, then we need to do it as good as everything else is on the menu, you know. So sourcing the ingredients, the cooking techniques, how to get the most nutritional value out of what it is that we're cooking. Because even if you cook a full vegan menu, but you use things maybe like seitan, which has absolutely zero nutritional value, then you're not giving people a nourishing meal anyway. You're just giving them essentially nothing. You're filling a hole with like empty carbohydrates and things like that. And the UK this year, I believe, overtook Germany as the world's vegan capital, and that was down to supermarkets launching more and more ranges of vegan products. but some of them unfortunately just have not very much nutritional value. So we cook the vegan menu, and it's been a real focus for this month. We've done it for a long time, we've got it across all the restaurants, but this year's been a lot of press surrounding plant-based diets. There's been that thing on Netflix, Game Changers, which I think quite a lot of people have seen, and they've taken a massive interest in plant-based diets. So again, I just wanted to refresh people's memory that not only are we a restaurant that does cook meat and fish, but we also have a vegan offering that's as good as our regular offering.
And Kirk, I think it's important to just touch briefly on why your views changed on veganism. We won't go into massive detail, but for people who don't know, maybe explain a little bit about how it changed 4 years ago and why you don't just do a vegan only menu, but you are a vegan as well. So
yeah, I think I went through a lot of health issues, and I started to get frustrated with doctors and just the way I was getting from pillar to post and medication after medication, and and eventually I found that I was suffering from Lyme disease, and I started to look at how important the gut is in health, mind and body, and I started to basically just take out bits, take out refined sugar, take out sugars, all sugars, take out dairy, take out red meat, and then I cut it right back like that. It started off slowly. I think if anyone's going to do it, you can't just do it, go from one day eating everything and go from one day doing vegan, because it is extreme, so you have to, and it's personal, some people benefit from it, some people don't, and we have to understand that, and that's also a big part of veganism and stuff, and I think it's incredible that there are so much, so many good things around it, for, in many ways, not just personal and diet reasons, sustainability, for the planet, also is an amazing reason. And yeah, like Jamie said, I think he touched on a really good point that we have to understand that some vegan stuff isn't actually healthy. So we have to, if you're going to do it, you have to understand that you need to get your proteins from this, you need to get this, you need to get that, you need to get, so you're actually getting a full diet, and you're getting nutrients. And then I created Plates, which is my restaurant and food studio, which we're a restaurant on the weekend. In the week we do a lot of development, brand campaigns, events, all that sort of thing. So we focus on just solely plants. And I don't use the word vegan because I think vegan cooking should just be looked at as, like if you go into a steak restaurant, you go and get steak and chips. You go into a vegan restaurant, you go into I say, why can we not call it vegetable cookery? Vegetable cookery, it's a vegetable restaurant, a fish restaurant, a meat restaurant. They should all be looked and respected in the same way. And just cooking with so much passion and dedication with fruits and vegetables, that's all I try and do.
And I think this goes to both of you, but we'll start with you, Kirk. How easy is it to create, obviously Plates is purely vegan, so how easy is it to create a menu that competes with restaurants that aren't serving a vegan menu? And then I think, Jamie, you can touch on that as well, because you're cooking across the board, so we'll start with you.
It's not easy, I'm not going to lie, it's not easy, but I've found that putting yourself in a corner and restricting yourself actually forces you to be more creative and create some incredible things. So it's definitely not easy, but my goal is it has to be better than. I eat it because I've come from a massive foodie family. My father's a chef, so I've come from eating everything. I used to eat everything, so I've been on that scale of the spectrum, and now I'm on the other. And I really use my experience with that. And for me, everything I do, I'm so critical that it has to be, if not as good as, better than if you eat a meat dish or a fish dish or a dessert, for instance. It has to give you that indulgence, that richness, that feeling of to make you feel satisfied.
And do people ask for the vegan menu that aren't vegans at the Frog?
Yeah, we have people trying it. So the whole of November I've actually gone with our tasting menu. I've gone back to back, one side the plant-based menu and then one side the regular menu. So we're encouraging tables of two to maybe perhaps go for one of each, so that they can both try, both sides of the coin essentially, to try and not educate, because that sounds a little bit patronising, but just kind of show people that, like I said, like vegetable cooking can be just as good as meat or fish cooking. you can go to some restaurants and you can be given a piece of fish that's maybe slightly overcooked, or a piece of meat that's slightly under or over, but 9 times out of 10 people are happy to eat it, and they'll at least say they've enjoyed it. Whereas when it comes to, I think, the plant-based cooking, people, because it has that stigma attached to it, are already way more critical, which makes you again step up your game to make sure that, if you're serving something, it needs to be perfectly cooked, it needs to be amazing every time, it needs to provide, texture, temperatures. A dish has to include a lot more than what it would normally include if you were just serving a piece of fish with some vegetables. And again, plant-based cooking, when you work in a restaurant that serves both, you're serving garnishes with your protein dishes anyway. So all you're essentially doing is taking that protein away and then putting more concentration into what you would be serving with it normally and creating a whole dish from that. So I think for me it's maybe been less challenging to make that transition to the vegan menu, because I'm essentially having all of those things on the plate already. I'm just taking one element away, instead of having to start a complete dish from scratch.
Yeah. Not all chefs embrace veganism.
No.
How do you feel about chefs who are like, no, that's not what I do? If you want a vegan menu, you need to go somewhere that has a vegan menu.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel about that kind of attitude towards it?
I think that's a really interesting topic, and I think I'm actually writing about this at the moment, and I think like I said, I've worked in kitchens. All the kitchens that I've trained in actually have cooked with meat and fish. And I've been in those kitchens where you're working 16 hours or whatever, and it's really busy and it's stressful, and you've already got 3 menus, and then people want vegan, and it can be too much. So we have to, as a consumer, we have to kind of understand that if a chef actually doesn't want to do a vegan menu, we have to say okay, because we have to kind of respect that. Do you know what I mean? And if because there is now lots of places that do. So if you do your research before and then come to that restaurant that does do a vegan menu, you're probably more happy, because it is a lot of extra work. If it's and I just do that, and I realise it's a lot, and all I do is focus on plants, and it's a lot of work. So if you're running 2 or 3 menus with meat, fish, and all the rest of it, and then you have that on top of it, you've got to keep your business running and happy. I think we have to kind of understand that kind of level, that if you don't have time to do it, and that's not, some chefs kind of are not saying, maybe I'm not doing it because I don't want to or anything, maybe just because they don't have the time, and I think that has to be understandable. I think, and probably consumers probably don't sometimes see what it's like in the kitchen behind the scenes sort of thing, but then again, it's incredible if that chef does want to do it and take it on board, because if there's some incredible cooks in London and all around Europe and the world, so if they put that same creativity and dedication that they do into the meat and fish that they do into vegetables, there could be some incredible dishes. So it's amazing, really.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Completely as well, and I think at the end of the day, it's not really the chef who gets to decide what he cooks. When it comes to it, eventually it's going to be the consumer who decides. If in 10 years' time you see that, 50% of the population in London decides to go plant-based, a chef's going to cut out half of their potential market of customers because they maybe don't want to cook a certain type of food, or they're just going to embrace the change, like chefs have over the years with a lot of things. Cooking's, I guess, slowly in a lot of places got a lot more healthier, a lot more varied, a lot more fruit and vegetable forward than it has been in the past. So I think the change is already happening. But then again, in London, it's so diverse. There's always going to be a market big enough for everyone to get everything that they want. I've been eating plant-based. I'm trying to do it for the whole of November while we're running this menu, and it's not for any kind of health reasons. It's more just to understand the challenges of somebody who decides to have that plant-based diet. If I want to go to a restaurant on my day off on Sunday when we're closed, I need to start looking now or a couple of days ahead, or ask out for a recommendation, like where's good to go if I have this diet, because I think in a way as well it's kind of unfair for you to just go out into town, walk into a restaurant and go, by the way, I'm vegan, because then you're putting the responsibility on the restaurant, rather than as a consumer taking the responsibility for your own life choices and researching a restaurant that can provide you with the meal that you're looking for.
And I think, like you said, on the other way to look at it is business-wise as well. If you maybe in the next 5 years, businesses will have to do it, to keep, to keep all the customers happy, and that's another way to look at it.
We talked off camera, and you said if someone like René Redzepi, for example, went vegan, you felt that would have a domino effect because he's so well regarded within the industry.
Yeah, and I think he has said little things. I think people have, I've seen comments on Instagram and stuff, and he has said, some people have said, would you make Noma completely plant-based? And he has said maybe, and if he did do that, say someone that's such an incredible world star and incredible chef, I think that would change a lot of people's minds, and maybe affect the chefs to maybe do similar or do a 75% plant-based menu or whichever.
I've got a question.
Yes.
What do you think about a raw food plant-based diet? They did it for a year, but really found it difficult to keep it up during the winter months.
Yeah, I think raw food diet is very, very difficult. I mean, I've done raw juicing, and I did a week just raw juice, and I've done raw, like a lot of I do eat probably a raw dish every two days, but in winter it's very hard, and to do that completely is very, very hard. And again, diet's personal, so if you feel good off it, great. If you don't, and you're feeling like you're missing stuff, then don't just do it for the sake of doing it.
I feel like that would be very difficult to eat out and have that diet.
Yeah, you just probably have to have salad. Probably easy for the chef though.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I know who that question's from, so I'm not answering it for them.
And you touched on it briefly, that you said, Jamie, that you're trying to have a plant-based diet for November.
Mm-hmm.
So do you actually like vegan dishes? Is that something that you found that you do actually enjoy them?
Yeah, completely. I only really meat or fish at home when I'm cooking if it's going to be a great piece of meat or fish.
Yeah.
Because it's the same at the restaurant as well. We only source the best ingredients that we can afford. And if we can't offer something that's going to be good, I'm not going to use a battery farm chicken, or I'm not going to cook something like that at home just for the sake of having chicken. I'd rather just leave it out. And if you're thinking about like vegan dishes at home or plant-based dishes at home, you're probably doing it more often than you think anyway. If you're making a vegetable curry with rice or something, it's pretty much a good, wholesome plant-based meal. It's not exactly what you do at a restaurant level, but it's simple, it's tasty, it's nutritional, it's fast as well, which is a difficult thing, because meal planning in general takes a long time if you've got a busy lifestyle. So if you eliminate meat or fish from that, which is usually as well the most potentially tricky factor in cooking that, because you need to make sure that it's cooked nicely enough for you to enjoy in the first place. If you eliminate that from your meal planning, you're going to save time, you're going to save money, and the meal's going to be just as nutritious.
And for both of you, do you both think there's enough products out there that cater for a plant-based diet that people might want? For example, mayonnaise, that they couldn't have it, just as an example.
She said she wasn't going to do that.
Yeah. Little plug in there. But for example, are there enough of those kind of products? If you just fancy, you fancy something but you can't have it because of the ingredients?
I think this is. I don't. There's a lot of like meat replacements, and I think Jamie touched on seitan, and I completely agree with him. Seitan is not healthy, but and I don't think I've ever eaten it, because I'm kind of, and plates was always about I don't want to imitate meat or fish or do fake meat and fake chicken and all these sort of things, but that has its place for other consumers, and there's nothing wrong with that again. But in terms of products, there are lots of products, are there enough variety? I think that will definitely get better over time. I mean, there are obviously the falafels and the vegan burgers and all that sort of thing. But I kind of don't eat like that. I eat vegetables and fruits, and I just cook them. Yeah,
I think the products are already there. It's fruit, vegetables, grains, pulses. They are essentially the products for plant-based diet. Anything else kind of like supplements. Actually, one thing I found really useful is all of the nut butters that are out there. So like pumpkin seed butter and stuff. for like snacking, like between services and stuff. That can be quite tough because, you know, there's always bits and pieces to hand, but I'm not going to start eating all the vegan menu mise en place. So yeah, like nut butters and things like that, you know, derivatives of natural ingredients are good, but same as Kirk, I never wanted to be using like meat imitations, or I think Quan's brand, isn't it? Is that a brand or a product? But yeah, I didn't ever want to sort of just try and make something look like something else. I just wanted to use really nice, good vegetables, and as well as sustainability and the whole zero waste aspect. You know, using a whole cut of meat, you know, use a whole pumpkin and just do it in the same way. You know, just break it down into its different parts, look at it objectively, and see how you can use the whole of that to create a whole dish from it.
And you touched on it when we started about how apparently Britain has become the vegan capital of the world. I feel like that might be a bit more London-centric, that statement.
For sure.
So do you agree with that? Have you seen a change in like London restaurants? And you are both from the north. I don't know what do your friends who are chefs in the north think about plant-based?
Yeah, it's almost, and this isn't being no offence to the north or anything, but it's almost like, and I think that, how do I say this?
You said it now.
Hopefully a few of my mates aren't watching. Almost like London's so fast moving with everything, not just food. So I think when you then go up north, they kind of, not behind, but they just, the vegan hasn't got there yet. That veganism trend or whatever, you know, sustainability, it hasn't got there yet, and it will, I think. Will they adhere to it? I'm not too sure. But again, you know, it's for everybody. You know, I always tell my friends, if you can almost reverse the meat. So normally you have like more meat and then a bit of veg. If you reverse it and do a little bit of meat and lots of veg, that's a good way just to do, you know, have more vegetables into your diet.
Yeah, I think meat-free Monday is probably the most common look towards this style of diet across the board in the UK. I think that went massive, the whole meat-free Monday situation. But again, it has to be led almost in a way by the consumer. So through advertising, through supermarkets changing the way that they advertise things to people, and just trying to remove this stigma that veganism has attached to it. You know, I
think it's that word though, isn't it?
It is 100%.
You know, if we could call it, if it was vegetable cookery, fish cookery, meat cookery, we kind of envision it quite differently, right?
And also how accessible it is for people, because wholesale meat that's made on an industrial scale was produced to feed a lot of people cheaply. Whereas, you know, if you want to go into a more specialist diet, it does become more challenging, more time consuming, and it can become even more expensive than just sticking to what you already know. So I think until it does become more popular across the board and stops being more of a kind of specialist diet for people, because one thing, for instance, with I saw that Game Changers thing on Netflix, and all of the people that are currently on a plant-based diet and they're feeling the benefits from it are elites. So they're athletes or sportsmen and women at the top of their game. So for them it's kind of easy, because they can go into a 5-star hotel and say, this is my diet plan, this is what I require, and they have it handed to them. And
they'll have personal nutritionists and chefs, won't they, as well?
Yeah, exactly. So just anybody, you know, who wants to start over the next few months to start leaning towards that diet, they have to do all of the research themselves, all of the sourcing of the products. They have to work out what's going to be best for them in the long run, whether it's to eliminate it completely or whether it's to be pescatarian. Or so it's tough. So
yeah, and I think the going back to the north question, I think as well, it's a hell of a lot harder to probably go out into the north and get vegan food than it is to get in London. I mean, there's so many, you know, you can get it a lot quicker. So that's another reason that probably that will obviously take time for that to kind of travel that way almost.
And when you eat out, Kirk, do you have to really think about where you're going before you go, or have you got?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't eat out that much anymore. Yeah.
So, Would you
But yeah, no, I don't. I don't do that much. I think in London there's so many places now, and you just ask, don't you?
So as chefs, and from a business point of view, I think my final question would be, what sort of advice would you give to chefs that maybe don't have a vegan menu but would quite like to embrace that and to try that? I'll start with you, Jamie, because you're doing both. What advice would you give them, and how's the best way to go about just bringing that in and filtering it in? And does your whole, and this is a few questions in one, but does your whole team have to embrace that as well?
I think we'll start with the last question. I think as chefs anyway, they're going to be open-minded. So anything that you introduce to them, you just need to support it with evidence as to why it's good for the restaurant. And then, they work for the restaurant, so they need to do that anyway. For chefs who maybe don't do it, if they don't do it because they don't have to, and it doesn't make business sense, then they don't need to do it, because there's enough restaurants in London that are going to do it anyway. The market's saturated with restaurants in London. Just because one chef's doing it doesn't mean another has to, if they don't need to. If they don't have guests coming on a regular basis, if they're not losing trade and business over it, or their restaurant's completely empty because they've not got a vegan menu, then okay, maybe look at it as an option. If you want to look at it as an option for kind of like future proofing, so like maybe in 5 years where you are going to need a vegan menu, then just start with looking at your menu already, and all of the different elements and components, and you'd be surprised as to how much is probably already plant-based anyway. Because there's always fresh fruit and vegetables being delivered into a restaurant every single day, usually just being served with proteins. So just remove the protein and you've got a dish anyway, 9 times out of 10.
Kirk, what about you? What would your advice be? Because obviously yours is completely plant-based. Mm-hmm. What would your advice be for any chefs that are thinking about putting that onto their menu?
Yeah, I think if you can, embrace the challenge and make it fun for your team, and make it like it can force so many more ideas and creativity, which then you could, like Jamie said at the start, you could use that then onto your meat and fish garnishes, for instance. It would excel the whole menu. So if you actually could make, get the team together and they're all on board and make it fun and kind of make it exciting and creative, I don't see why they wouldn't, So I think it's a great thing.
And what sort of feedback do you get on your menu? Because I'm assuming you have consumers that aren't vegan.
Yeah, like at Place we have about 80% on, which is amazing. And we always said we don't just want to appeal. We want to appeal to everybody. We want it to be an open restaurant where everybody can come, and even that person that eats meat every week, they can come and they're not judged, and they can, and hopefully we make them feel amazing and make them feel, give them that satisfied feeling, and not make them feel like they've missed out, and make them feel special through plants. And that's something that I always aspire to do and aspire to achieve, and every single week try and be better at. And I think that's something that's just going to progress as time goes on.
And do you think you're obviously doing a plant-based diet for November? Do you think that's something that you would like to carry on? And do you think you would like to see more of those kind of dishes that you've got on now throughout the year, not just focused on this particular month?
Yeah, I mean the menu runs all the time. It has done for the last sort of 4 years since the original restaurant. And it'll continue, going on. And like Kirk said as well, if you elevate your vegetable cooking anyway for that one specific menu, then you're elevating it across the board for your whole menu anyway. So you could take more ideas for your regular menu when creating your plant-based menu than maybe you would if you was focusing solely on your regular menu, where the focus usually turns towards the protein, because that's the most expensive thing that you're putting on the plate. When you're charging for a lamb dish, you're essentially charging for the lamb and then kind of what goes with it. So yeah, I really enjoy the development of the plant-based dishes, and it's a real challenge as well using the whole ingredient, like especially like the pumpkin where you have the skins and things like that. You need to figure out a way of how you're going to use it so that nothing goes to waste, as if you was using a prime piece of meat. So I love the challenge. I'm going to keep doing it.
And has the diet helped you as a chef, get an understanding for what maybe your customers want?
Yeah, completely, which is what I wanted, because I didn't want to be kind of that chef who has the plant-based menu, but he's never actually tried to live that lifestyle himself and try to adhere to that diet. So I don't get a load of angry vegans calling me out as a hypocrite. I thought I'd give it a go for at least a month, and then
I think it'll probably make you more determined to make more amazing dishes.
Yeah, exactly. So then customers are going to get a really good experience that I would hope for this month when I go out and eat places.
Perfect. Well, I think that's the end of the questions. We haven't got any more. So thank you both very, very much, and we'll see you soon. We hope you enjoyed this interview, and if you have any comments, feel free to tweet us or comment on the post. We're making all of our interviews available to download. And finally, if you like what we do, whether it's our podcast or our videos or even our features, please head over to our Patreon page and support us there.